And what I found, and dude, I used to track this in car sales. You know who the highest producer was? Me. You know who sold the most cars? Me. It was, the craziest part was the relative thing was like, I was doing 100 calls a day, and I was selling maybe, 30% more than the next guy. He was only making, 20 calls. And so I made 80 calls that were worthless, but I sold so much more. So relative, his percentages were higher than mine. And I think that's what you're talking about. His percentages were higher based on like his closing ratio and stuff. So I always consider him a better salesperson. But dude, I'm still going to outperform you every single month because I'm willing to put in more. I have better systems, and I can produce, and I will not burn out. I'll keep going. And so
you have talent.
Yeah. Well, it's not even talent.
It is.
He
talent.
had more talent.
No,
because
you have more talent.
No, I have more talent in a
on
system. Yeah, I have more talent. I have more discipline. I have more grit.
Yeah.
But like when you look at
talent.
that is, I guess, a talent or a skill that I think you can develop. But what I would say is he's actually a better closer because he talks to less people and he does less deals, but the amount of people that he talks to versus the amount of deals that he's closing is actually a lot lower than mine. Yeah. But for me, I'm willing to work harder than everybody, which also means I'm going to develop faster because now I talk to so many more people that my skills get higher. And so I look at it in the sense of like not my best ROI per customer, but I'm just going to outperform overall. Yeah.
Okay, so let's transition to personal development, and then we'll wrap up. All right, so you're in shape. You're freaking rich. You got a Rolex.
Rolex makes you rich.
Yeah, Rolex makes you rich. You have a great relationship with Jesus. You're healthy. You have all this going on. How do you do it?
That puts me in an interesting light, I would say, that's not necessarily accurate, too.
Do you have a Rolex?
Yes.
Do you have abs?
Yeah.
Do you make more than the average American?
Yeah.
By a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so then,
well, what I mean by that, it was like everybody would be like, oh, you got the life,
Exactly.
And so like that's the interesting part is what I'm saying is like you feel good, you're happy, you're all that stuff. And what's funny to me is like I've been more unhappy now recently than I have in my entire life.
No way.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And so it's
you just got out of a breakup too.
Yeah.
So that is a big reason why.
Sure.
So that's that you can't like.
I'm just saying, like a lot of people will see that they look at me and they're like, "Oh man, there's this good-looking guy who's like got a lot of money." And
I don't know about good-looking, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, that's what everybody said. Like whenever I got out of my divorce, like, "Oh, you're young, you're good-looking, and all this stuff," and I was like, "Dude, I was miserable, and I was making more money than I've ever made."
Yeah.
And so I'm in a similar spot where like my relationship with God is growing, and honestly, I feel like your relationship with Christ is growing the most for me personally in my lows. Like that's when I feel the closest. Sure. Is like, and a lot of people like kind of push away from that. Like, oh man, you only go to God whenever you need him and stuff. But sometimes God puts you in the situations where you have everything that the world sees as great just to show you that it's nothing without him.
Yeah. That's testimony also.
That's where I feel like I'm at right now, honestly, is like in a sense of like going back to what's actually important and reevaluating that. And so that's where I'm at with everything. So while I think it is important to have every area of life, your health, your relationships, your business, your money. I think it's still very important for your spirituality to remember that's the most important. Like that's really the foundation of everything. And so that's where I feel like I'm being led to because sometimes it gets mixed up too. You know, like you think you're doing all this stuff for God's glory and then like it gets mixed up to where it's not. And so that's where I feel like I'm at.
Funny.